The cruelest part of this story isn't that Lena gets hunted by mistake. The cruelest part is that every time Adrian saves her, he strips away another piece of the life she used to have. Her apartment, her job, her normal world, her chance to ever be ordinary again. And the most twisted part, the only man powerful enough to keep her alive is also the man dangerous enough to ruin her forever. He saves her from death, sure, but in return he drags her into a world where love and violence become impossible to separate.
Lena mistook a predator's mouth for a sanctuary. Adrian Voss isn't a savior, he's the apex shark who devours rivals for breakfast. In this desolate landscape, mercy is a system error. Lena faces a grim binary. Flee into the dark or kneel before the beast. 1:47 in the morning. Lena mops away her sanity, bathed in the sickly hum of a dying neon light as her shift expires. The Moonlight Cafe is a hollow monument to failure, yet it remains the only sanctuary Lena Park has left tonight. Marcus hums a tune of old wounds while Jerry sips on mediocrity. They are merely specters haunting this crumbling limbo. 2:00 sharp. Jerry departs, leaving Lena exposed. Deep in the shadows, a scavenger marks her as his next prize. Intuition screams to flee, but she dismisses it as city paranoia. A fatal error, the silence as a hunter holding its breath. Moments later, a pale creature with hollow eyes emerges. Her pulse accelerates to 100 beats a minute as raw dread takes hold. She attempts a cry for help, but her courage has dissolved. Marcus wants to intervene, but he is utterly outmatched. 2:15, Jerry has vanished. The stalker arrives. Lena's fingers fail her at the lock while hysteria seizes the controls. She plunges through the filth of the back alleys. A 3-block dash feels like an eternity with a demon at her heels. The hunter drops the charade. Marcus yells for her to fly, and she collapses into her decaying Honda as if it were a fortress. Marcus plays the martyr poorly. Lena's engine stalls like a cruel cinematic trope as the antagonist approaches with terrifying calm. Screams fall on deaf ears. He utters her name like a final prayer. Marcus tries to resist, but he is already a ghost. A hand slips into a jacket. Lena goes cold. In this lightless passage, a mobile phone carries the weight of a loaded weapon. He dismisses the cook, fixing a soul-claiming gaze on Lena. She snaps, accelerating toward the city's gilded cage. She bursts into a pristine foyer, worn sneakers screeching against cold marble. Broken, she pleads with the elite for salvation. Absolute stillness, a bartender and 2 masters of the universe. Then one rises, as lethal and precise as a blade. Behold Adrian Voss, a heartless reaper draped in $3,000 silk. His gaze could make even stone weep. His voice commands the silence. The hunter and the cook simply evaporate into the city's dark history. Lena unravels, prompting Adrian to unleash his enforcer, Victor. Suddenly, this titan is the only thing keeping her world spinning. He commands her to sit, and she obeys like a clockwork doll. The adrenaline fades, leaving her staring at a living instrument of war. He holds all the cards. This wasn't misfortune, it was a choreography. Lena realizes she is a minor piece in his endgame. Voss mocks the authorities as mere bureaucrats. He tells her the truth. He is the only wall between her and the abyss. He offers a golden ticket to his inner sanctum. Don't be fooled. He isn't rescuing her. He's forging her shackles from gold. Victor returns, the menace erased. Adrian looks serene, but the air thickens with the heavy scent of absolute authority. He seeks the origin of the scavenger. Lena begins to feel secure, a fatal delusion. She is simply trading for a larger monster. She attempts to leave, but Adrian dictates her path now. Victor becomes her shadow, turning the open air into a cell. Victor inspects her vehicle like a forensic technician. Her gratitude rings hollow as he trails her home, a predator in the rear view. She watches that card until dawn. It is a lifeline and a leash. Sunrise arrives, painting the world in shades of ash, returning to the tedium of medical records for a corporate vampire. She moves through the day like the living dead. The screen glows. A violent execution on Madison Street at 4 in the morning. Her blood turns to ice. That is her backyard. The target is in intensive care, no witnesses. A grainy image reveals her stalker. Lena's reality crumbles into her cold brew. 2 in the afternoon. Marcus confirms the man is a memory. A void of chilling dread settles deep within her soul. Marcus senses the shift. Adrian is a pure, unbridled beast. This isn't charity, it is an investment in blood. Drab office partitions and a heart heavy as lead. Every silhouette Lena encounters wears the shadow of Adrian's suit. Her own walls feel like a snare. That card from Adrian, it is a countdown timer vibrating in her palm. She dials the number. Adrian's tone radiates sovereignty. His methods are unspoken, shrouded in the crimson of the underworld. Turns out the hunter was merely bait. He issues a decree. Arrive by 8 or face the consequences of the void. A choice made in the frost. To survive the coming darkness, she must sign her name in the devil's ledger. An opulent dining room where vintage wine masks the metallic scent of a snare about to snap shut. Adrian sits poised, flawless, tailored, and possessing a mind that has already mapped 10 ways to erase her existence. He discusses mortality as casually as the daily specials. His eyes strip away the last remnants of her composure. He admires her defiance. He selects her meal without a word. This is pure, unadulterated psychological conquest. What about Chen? Shattered bones in a sterile bed. Adrian calls it discipline. I call it a decree written in gore. Listen closely. Park isn't a person anymore. She's just a digit scrawled in some cold, ink-stained ledger. Shadows are closing in, and she's dissolving into the mist. No longer a soul, but a name marked for death. He offers a hand while slowly devouring her spirit, waiting for the moment she simply ceases to exist. Breath has a price tag now. Meet the Phantom Architect, a monster who fancies himself a god among men. He uses terror like a scalpel, peeling away her world until he is the only ghost left in her room. The cage doors are locked. Freedom is just a memory now that he's seized the reins of her very soul. The chime signals Adrian's exit. He's gone, leaving behind a chill that even the deepest winter couldn't match. The refuge has fallen. Blood stains the floor, and her prayer for safety has been reduced to flickering embers. The hearse arrives in the form of a black sedan, and Park is nothing but expensive freight in the back. They've reached the asylum, a place where the psychological toll of survival begins to fracture her mind entirely. Lost and desperate, she walks straight into the lion's den, hunting for truths that might just kill her anyway. The digital spark was Lou's doing, but it's the innocent Lena who's being consumed by the resulting inferno. Lena's gone. A tragic casualty in a world that pulls the trigger long before it ever wonders why. He dwells in a crystal tower that radiates wealth but offers as much warmth as a hollowed-out glacier. Beneath that silk suit lies an empty abyss. He is a nightmare, tailored to look like an ordinary executive. He whispers of protection while the city turns a blind eye to her slow descent into absolute madness. She finally breaks. His home is a brutalist tomb of cement, cold, silent, and smelling faintly of the end. There is no comfort here. Every shadow hides a lens, turning a sanctuary into a stage for his observation. This harbor is a cage. He'd already dissected her entire existence before she ever crossed his threshold. Fatigue claims her. Sedated into a hollow silence, she's lost the very memory of what it means to choose. It's a binary choice. Exist within these walls or vanish from the world entirely. There is no middle ground. She drowns her trauma in spirits while he watches, seeing her as nothing more than a malfunctioning piece of code. The hunt is on. She retreats to the shadows, knowing her captor is the only shield against the coming storm. She checks the deadbolts, but he reminds her, no iron door can keep out the beast she's living with. The room is a hollow shell. Looking out, she sees only an endless night waiting to swallow her whole. Hunters track her pulse. She bolts the door, but wood is useless against the man who owns the air. Night brought only scars. She wakes to the scent of coffee in a house built on a foundation of bone. He pours the brew with mechanical precision, treating her like a dented gear in a much larger machine. Bitter coffee, heavy silence. She demands the truth about the wolves currently baying at her heels. He mentions the screams of those he's breaking for info. To him, brutality is just the morning's first chore. Her morality is a luxury she can't afford. A Russian phantom enters, and the room's temperature drops to 0. The stakes shift violently. His gaze turns to stone as the horror of the situation finally comes into focus. Her past is a pyre on the screen. This wasn't just a fire. It was a signature written in gasoline. At 0400, her world turned to soot. The jagged glass on the floor mirrors her heart. Panic is his currency. She lashes out, blaming the only man who saved her from the literal flames. He counters with a freezing truth. He didn't start the fire, he just pulled her from the wreckage. He isn't seeking blood, only deletion. He wants this messy variable wiped from his ledger for good. A wordless gesture, a call to the hunt. Her protests die under the weight of his singular, lethal stare. He's a wolf in fine wool, warning her that she's never seen the monster hiding beneath the skin. The silence fractures, but the wall remains. She sits alone, watching her life turn to smoke on a monitor. She scrubs to stay grounded, but his hauntingly steady voice still echoes through the hollow halls of her mind. At 12:00, food is served. This man has been the silent guardian of his master's pride for 7 years. Doubt is a death sentence. At 15:00, the hunter returns to his steel sanctuary to plan the kill. He scrubs away the crimson, untouched. That blood, it belonged to someone who didn't know when to be silent. A single red stain remains. A predator named Vincent is hunting for the secrets buried in her father's ledger. Vincent is lost in a fever dream. He views his father's name as a holy shield, yet the man would incinerate the world before confessing a single flaw. Lena is fracturing before our eyes. Then he produces the ledger, a heavy record taken from a soul whose voice only returned once the agony became unbearable. They pulled that ancient volume from the shadows 2 hours ago, yet he cradles it like a god. He truly believes he can rewrite the heavens. Such arrogance. "Will he take my life?" she whispers. He discusses murder like a grocery inventory. No pulse, no pity. He has lived in the darkness far too long. "Welcome to your new cage, Miss Park. Rule 1, total surrender." Her defiance dies when she sees his crimson knuckles and her world reduced to gray ash. These stone walls are her only sanctuary tonight. The adversary thinks he is buying her, but we are changing the ending. I shall stay for the fire. A sharp refusal follows, but Lena stands firm. She must see the abyss. He offers a rare, haunting smile, calling her either courageous or simply ready to die. It is the same thing. He orders Victor, his iron shadow, to arm her. She questions the vest, and he notes it merely keeps the lead out. 1 hour later, she is draped in heavy denim and steel. The armor is light, but the implications are heavy. Adrian emerges, finally washing away the morning's sins. "Ready?" "Never." Honesty is a rare gift. The 40-minute drive through industrial decay ends as he whispers, "Welcome to the place where Marcus hunts his prey." What was his undoing? Simple. He was too clever for his soul. He tried to leash a monster and lost his lineage. Greed would have eventually finished him. Drawing breath is not the same as living. They enter a graveyard of rusted iron and brine. His only command is for her to shadow Victor like stone. Victor is your only hope if the world breaks. She fears the gunfire. He remains as cold as ice, moving into the shadows while her heart races. The guards are wolves in silk. Then comes Vincent Jiao. He labels Lena an unwelcome ghost, but Adrienne introduces her as the woman who survived his hit. The girl you failed to bury. Jiao masks his fear, but Adrienne counts the sins, the fire, the bombs, the price. The old Lena is officially a memory. She has been forged anew. Jiao meets her gaze, but she does not flinch. Adrienne reveals the ledger, and for a second, the powerful man looks small. Witness your legacy, Adrienne warns. This book is your epitaph. Every lie and every theft. I can give it to the law or we can burn it. What is the cost? Sanctuary. Lena is now holy ground. Refuse, and the feds get the file by dawn before I personally claim your soul tomorrow night. The silence is heavy enough to crush bone. Adrienne begins reading Jiao's darkest secrets aloud, stripping his empire bare in a final brutal move of absolute power. With every secret spilled, Jiao withers. Adrienne offers a path that doesn't end in a pine box. Finally, the man folds. She is off limits. It is done. Ensure that promise holds. If she is harmed, your world ends. You do not want to see me disappointed. Jiao signals his shadows to vanish into night. Lena finally breathes as the docks fade. It's over. Adrienne explains the man was smart enough to recognize the flame before it consumed his entire life. She sees he still holds the ledger. In this theater, leverage is the only currency. He is a ghost of a man, yet she owes him her life. He offers no acknowledgement. The immediate threat is gone, but her mind is wreckage. She has seen the monsters now, and her old life is truly buried. They drive through the city in echoing silence. Moving from the filth to the lights feels like a dream. Lena feels her soul drifting into the shadows. Back at the manor, he is a frozen pillar, dismissing her to sleep. But Lena is done being a phantom. She demands a place in his dark reality. The mundane life she knew is dead. She is tired of being invisible and wants a seat at his table. She would rather face death than insignificance. It is a sickness, but she is hooked. After seeing him dismantle legacies, she craves that dark authority. He rules a world she now wants to claim. She refuses to be collateral damage. She wants her pulse to mean something. Adrienne offers a chilling smile, sensing the darkness finally taking root in her soul. The air is thick with his presence. To stay is to lose the light forever. He names her his asset, a prize to guard. It is a terrifying rush. He tilts her chin, a silent initiation into the abyss. A warning not to drown follows. That night, she leaves her door unlatched, surrendering to the gloom. Dawn brings a cold clarity. Adrienne is already working, barking orders in sharp Russian. In his exhaustion, the executioner looks almost human for a fleeting moment. He serves her coffee with silent precision. The fire is out, but her name is now a ghost story. Every predator is wondering why the king watches her. Their bond is a beautiful poison. Victor arrives with news that turns Adrienne to stone. A new storm is gathering, and the scent of iron returns. 4 lives are already gone, and the tally grows. Adrienne tries to hide her away, but she will not be a spectator while the world burns to ash. She pleads to help, and his composure finally breaks. He shows her the blood. 4 men ambushed, 2 dead. He will not let her be the next. The truth settles in. Her existence is now a crime scene. Every drop of blood spilled is on her tab. She is the cause of the coming slaughter. He laughs at her hope for safety. Now she sits in the hollow silence, feeling the weight of 4 dead guards pressing against her very soul. Welcome. Victor is unmoved, treating death like a common Tuesday. Meanwhile, Lena is spiraling in the dark, begging for a single thread of honest truth in this world. To Victor, the fallen are paperwork. For Adrienne, It is a blood debt, a vendetta against a traitor who spoke. He will collect that debt in full. A whisper in the dark is a death sentence. When Lena asks for the news, Adrienne simply notes the rat has been permanently erased from our reality. He returns at dusk, battered and broken, as if he fought the devil himself. Without a word, he limps toward the water, a ghost seeking a moment's peace. Look at him, bleeding and exhausted, yet still finding a dark joke. He confirms that the adversary is currently being measured for a final resting place. Lena attempts to mend his wounds while he maintains his icy mask. He watches her reflection in the glass, a haunting presence in her new dark world. She finally takes command, stitching his flesh while he is too weak to resist. The rivals are buried now. The problem has been efficiently deleted. As he scrubs the crimson from his mangled knuckles, he demands she flee, yet she lingers, choosing to submerge herself in his madness. A single name escapes his lips, but it carries no warmth. It is the final snap of a soul losing its grip on sanity. The boundary has vanished. A healer and a dealer of death have collided in a gore-stained wreck where mercy no longer lives. He unleashes the monster within to drive her away, but she stands motionless, gazing at the slaughter with haunting, untroubled eyes. Her fingertips trace the maps of his scars, recognizing the jagged path that led two broken lives to this singular, tragic intersection. 5 years ago, a cold blade stripped away his arrogance, proving he was never a god, just a mortal capable of bleeding out. In this shadow world, affection is a fatal flaw. Now she has become the heaviest liability in his cold, calculated game of survival. This apex predator finds rest only in her presence. It is a deep psychological haunting, a total obsession that keeps him tethered to earth. Their pulses have found a shared rhythm. Perhaps it is a soulmate's connection, or maybe they have simply lost their minds in unison. 21 days of darkness have passed, and the sight of blood no longer makes her tremble. She has finally embraced the family's grim legacy. She searches his gaze for a flicker of reason, but that light extinguished long ago. There is nothing left but a hollow echo. To the syndicate, she is nothing but a beautiful mark, a walking target that ensures everyone involved will eventually burn. This is not a romance, it is a bond forged in captivity. She is losing her heart to the very man who built her cage. On a quiet Tuesday, the realization settles in. She is a fragile porcelain doll, trapped inside a factory of heavy steel and suffering. When the blades were drawn, her spirit faltered. It was a cold reminder that in this life, no savior is coming to the rescue. Her story nearly reached its final chapter tonight. She was one heartbeat away from an eternal, silent rest beneath the cold earth. He is occupied with the arithmetic of death and ammunition, while she drowns in the overwhelming agony of her shattered reality. Consumed by paranoia, he triples the watch. He is desperate to shield the only piece of his soul he has not yet destroyed. Drenched in the evidence of his sins, the monster finally whispers that she is the only thing keeping him from drifting away. Those 3 seconds of absolute vulnerability are eating him alive. His pride has been reduced to nothing but jagged, painful glass. She has transformed into his solitary anchor, the only force capable of silencing the howling storms that rage within his mind. He offers a wedding ring as if it were a tactical maneuver. This is not a vow of love, but a strategic locking of the gate. His proposal carries no scent of roses. It is a desperate final attempt to build a fortress around the wreckage of his life. Claiming her is an act of pure dominance. He is effectively turning her into a human shield against the ghosts of his past. Her internal walls finally give way. Amidst the flames of a dying empire, they weave a bond out of shared trauma and ruin. That massive diamond is no token of affection. It is a high-carat shackle forged for his most precious and beautiful new captive. She believes they are growing closer, but they are merely sinking together into a dark, bottomless ocean where logic goes to die. 24 hours remain on the clock before her soul is signed over to him forever. No turning back, no hope of escape. He is marking his territory with primal ferocity, signaling to the world that any hand raised against her will be severed. She is merely the latest prize in his gilded cage, a priceless treasure whose wings have been permanently clipped by his hand. Her anonymity has vanished. She has just become the most expensive contract for every shadow dweller in this hollow neon city. The hired guns see his heart softening, and they know the end is near. In this trade, empathy is a signed death warrant. The hierarchy of the underworld has shifted. She is now the sun around which his entire dark universe desperately revolves. He is incinerating every bridge behind him just to hold her. By tomorrow noon, their fates will be legally bound in shadow. 7 minutes, 2 silent witnesses, and a total lack of grace. Just a cold agreement written in ink and sealed in blood. There was never a choice involved. He simply moved in and took over, pulling her too deep into his nightmare to ever resurface. One brother wears a mask of kindness, while the other constructs a luxury prison requiring 6 months of clearance just to breathe. She views this as a new beginning, but he is only looking for fresh tinder to help him set the entire world ablaze. 30 days have passed, and she is already finding peace with the murderer. She feels safe only because he is the apex predator. One chilling smile is all it took to seal the bargain. He is dismantling his own empire just to make room for her ghost. Once the sun vanishes, she will inherit a new name and a status that he dares any man in this city to challenge. He is choreographing a symphony of slaughter, and remarkably, she remains composed while diving headlong into the center of his chaos. Their fragile peace is haunted by the Reaper, and a 6-day respite is shattered by a ghost seeking blood and old vengeance. She plays out a normal life within his fortress, unaware that the security perimeter is being torn apart by those outside. That exiled brother finally returns from the shadows after 3 years, leading 12 demons to reclaim a throne built on betrayal. The firstborn is a creature of pure malice, but Adrian's frozen exterior conceals a dark truth. He once tried to purchase his siblings' permanent silence in a casket. Victor feeds like a parasitic shadow, and because Adrian's covert strike failed its mark, their entire fortune now bleeds into the light. Diana waits in the silence as Victor's 3-year exile ends, his gaze fixed on a throne he intends to baptize in crimson. He hungers for both the crown and the woman, forcing Adrian to realize that his world is standing in the precipice of a total apocalypse. The era of whispers and shadows is over. Adrian abandons the safety of the dark to stand tall within the scorching reach of the flames. Witness a brilliant mind clash with a ravenous demon, a creature to whom the word mercy sounds like a foreign tongue he never learned. Adrian weaves a clever web under the city lights, turning the gaze of 10,000 strangers into his only armor against the dark. A quiet midday bistro transforms into a theater of power, where Lena is displayed like a prize seized from a fallen kingdom. It is the old tragedy of the bastard son, where the true heir views Adrian's very breath as a personal stain upon the family name. Their father chose the vanity of one over the fire of the other, fueling 3 years of quiet hatred for this hollow homecoming. 12 killers wait in a heavy hush as the crowd pretends not to notice the scent of damp earth and a fresh grave. Victor weaponizes a childhood name to draw blood, his eyes scanning Lena with the cold apathy of a man reading a shopping list. When Adrian speaks of marriage, Victor mocks the notion, dismissing their shared devotion as a mere sickness of the heart. Victor circles like a carrion bird, laughing at the thought that Adrian lacks the iron will to slaughter his own kin. A struggle between calculated restraint and raw insanity ensues, just before that broken soul turns his hollow gaze back toward Lena. Lena whispers of the 47 souls he took, but Adrian silences the ghosts to protect the fragile light still left in her eyes. The moment Victor's shadow falls over her, Adrian's mask shatters, exposing a man ready to set the horizon ablaze for her sake. Only the sudden presence of others stayed the hand of death, forcing Adrian to chain the monster screaming within his chest. Victor scoffs at Adrian's domestic life, his voice still bitter over the crown that was snatched away so many seasons ago. While the shadows crave order, Victor demands a violent upheaval, thirsty to see the old hierarchy drowned in a sea of red. With a 48-hour clock ticking, Lena sees the coming storm, understanding that Victor's broken mind knows only slaughter. Adrian vows a scorched earth should Lena suffer a single scratch, but Victor only offers a hollow, haunting chuckle in return. The veil falls as Adrian confesses his destructive past, showing her that her savior is merely a phantom in a tailored suit. For him, extinguishing a life was as mundane as a daily chore, a grim reality Lena embraces with unwavering loyalty. The pieces are moved as Adrian cashes in every old debt, while the syndicates watch to see who survives the coming night. Honor is sold for pennies, as the elder brother uses coin to lure men into a treachery that will surely be their end. Lena finally glimpses the internal machinery, struck by the chilling precision that governs every move Adrian makes in this game. Rest becomes an impossible dream, leading to a fragile hour where Adrian reveals the true fear nesting deep in his soul. Aware that Victor knows no boundaries, he confesses he nearly staged his own funeral just to escape this cycle of misery. He offered her a path to safety, but she chose the battlefield, forging a connection that is a beautiful, lethal snare. Protection is a thing of the past. They have targeted 3 dynasties for ruin, and the era of hiding is finally over. After 3 years of silent preparation, their union has evolved into an instrument of absolute and total devastation. Lena has ascended from a simple piece on the board to the grand architect, scripting the very laws of their violent conquest. 2 houses have fallen, but the third invites them to a hollow meeting, a tired cliché of an ambush in a warehouse. Standing at the precipice of the fight, Lena shows she is no bystander but the very soul of this uprising. From the shadows, old Alexei observes, realizing he is not watching lovers, but the dawn of a terrifying new reign. Alexei views Adrian's devotion as a fatal flaw, the very vulnerability Victor seeks to exploit through his cruel mind games. Adrian warns the old guard, compassion may pay the bills, but it offers no warmth inside a wooden casket. He illustrates that Victor's dreams of empire are nothing more than a fast descent into absolute and total ruin. Alexei demands a king's ransom, but Lena sees through the hollow theater and dismantles his lies in an instant. Lena reduced Victor to a pathetic spectacle, leaving Adrian as the only man left standing with any shred of dignity. Seeing that the prey had developed lethal teeth, Alex reconsidered, extending a desperate olive branch once more. The tension ebbs briefly, but Victor's hunger for the spotlight remains a fuse burning toward an inevitable explosion. With a faint smile, Adrian labels Lena his most unpredictable asset as they depart, never losing his hold on the world. With Alex neutralized, Adrian begins the 48-hour clock, waiting for Victor's fragile sanity to finally unravel. Adrian answers 3 corpses with 72 hours of relentless waking nightmares. He dissects the syndicate with chilling precision as Lena sinks into an ocean of shame. A violated tomb sparks a 3 in the morning war, brother hunting brother through the shadows. Victor bleeds his childhood trauma, while Adrian views him as nothing more than street refuse. Victor craves the flames, but Adrian welcomes the abyss, deaf to Lena's frantic, hollow cries. Amidst the carnage, Adrian remains hauntingly still, dismissing the slaughter as a mere business expense. This is no cinematic deal, just 2 broken siblings clawing at each other in the freezing mud. The momentum shifts as Adrian's fingers find Victor's throat, both men gasping on the edge of extinction. A flicker of mercy offered is instantly choked by the suffocating weight of Victor's bruised pride. Victor dislocates his own shoulder to reach for a blade, but Lena moves like a vengeful ghost. In a heartbeat, she secures the weapon and punctures the family legacy with one well-placed round. Adrian looms over his broken kin, whispering the truth. His entire circle has already cashed their betrayal. The realization that Lena is a predator shatters Victor, allowing Adrian to finally silence the chaos. Victor finally surrenders to the inevitable, his first moment of clarity in 5 long, wasted years. The adrenaline fades into a crushing breakdown for Lena before Diana spirits them away from the sirens. Victor is a ghost now, and Adrian's hollow forgiveness serves only to cement his absolute, terrifying reign. The underworld kneels in silence, while Lena feels her innocence wither away into the dark. She recoils from the monster in her reflection, yet Adrian clings to her as his final tether to humanity. Staring into the glass, Lena confirms the fragile girl she once protected has been utterly consumed. 14 days pass before the psychological toll strikes, bringing back the icy phantom of the trigger. Adrian lingers in every shadow, reminding her that this agony is the heavy toll for remaining upright. The purge begins as Adrian systematically erases every lieutenant who dared to harbor a traitorous thought. Silence descends whenever Lena enters the room, a testament to the quiet dread she now inspires. Diana observes the shift. The street fears Lena's unpredictable spirit more than Adrian's calculated cold steel. 90 days later, the human trade is dismantled, and Adrian watches the blood-soaked millions turn to ash. He incinerates a fortune simply because he cannot endure the judgment burning in Lena's weary eyes. To salvage the remnants of his conscience, the kingpin abandons his throne to bargain with the authorities. He auctions off an entire empire for a clean slate, a gamble that leaves Lena completely breathless. After 42 days of testifying, the former predator becomes the government's most lethal, secret instrument. He razes his entire history to the ground, desperate to keep Lena's heart from turning to stone. A Tuesday sweep nets 37 souls, while Adrian's sins are scrubbed clean by official ink. He severs his own power to survive, leaving his former brothers to rot in concrete tombs. Even Alexei eventually confesses that viewing humans as inventory was the cancer that rotted their foundation. 6 months into this new life, the entire machine has been sterilized under Adrian's frozen gaze. Adrian has bleached the family's crimson legacy, shielding it behind a sterile corporate facade. He calculates his father's brutality like a cold equation, trading gunfire for spreadsheets. This evolution from butcher to architect is truly bone-chilling. He retreats to a secluded farmhouse, attempting to play the role of a quiet man. He understands the math. Men with his history rarely find peace, yet he gambles against the inevitable. Weekends are a performance of normalcy. As Lena struggles with the earth, Adrian constructs barriers with unsettling robotic perfection. They are both drifting in the shallow end of a standard life. At dusk, Lena whispers about making this dream permanent. Adrian finally lets the facade slip, wanting the lie to become his only truth. He is tired of the mask. 2 months in, and the world shifts. Lena is pregnant. She is a cocktail of exhaustion and terror, realizing that hope is far more dangerous than any assassin's bullet. She delivers the news with the clinical coldness of a briefing. Adrian stands paralyzed, his mind reeling. At 6 weeks, his composure fractures, revealing every buried emotion he's ever hidden. They use grim humor as a shield against the trauma, but Adrian's haunting laughter signals he is wagering everything on this impossible future. He embraces the coming storm without hesitation. Seeing his resolve, Lena's apprehension fades. Adrian is literally reshaping the entire criminal landscape to protect his unborn legacy. Make no mistake, the pregnancy is a grueling ordeal for Lena. Constant sickness and the echoes of her past make her fear she is fundamentally broken. Adrian morphs into a hyper-vigilant protector, interrogating medical staff like they are rival informants. He has no room for uncertainty. He demands total, absolute dominion over their safety. Their estate is transformed into a clinical fortress born of his obsession with outsmarting biology. It is his ultimate arrogance, trying to solve the mystery of life with cold, hard logic. Adrian's world of precision shatters at 36 weeks. He stands frozen, a statue of suppressed terror, as his meticulously ordered mind dissolves into white noise. Thursday midnight brings a daughter into this dark world. Arriving early, she bears a grit the doctors call stubbornness, but Adrian knows it is the fire of a survivor. He watches the cradle as if it holds a ticking ghost. Lifting her, his calloused hands tremble, fearing that his very touch might shatter something so hauntingly pure. Her tiny frame is his undoing. The ruthless king of the underworld finds his soul laid bare by a newborn's gaze. His icy facade not just cracking but weeping away. A fractured sound escapes him, a breath of grief and relief. He christens her Elena, a vow whispered to dark that the shadows he inhabits will never stain her soul. The wolves send their offerings, gilded bribes for a future queen. Men like Alexei Kozlov view children as mere pawns, but Adrian sees a life, not a play for power. He refuses to let her inherit his blood-soaked throne. For her freedom, he would put a torch to his entire dominion, watching it burn if it meant she could breathe. Within 12 months, the cycle repeats. Yet Lena is no longer the trembling captive. She has become a silent sentinel, forged in fire and ready for the storm. 14 days behind schedule, Marcus arrives on his own terms. Named for a ghost from the past, he enters a world of federal heat and lingering shadows. Adrian attempts the impossible, a peaceful home. He is rewriting his own dark history, turning a fortress of secrets into a sanctuary where children are loved, not used. The shift is haunting. A man obsessed with dominance now battles his own nature, desperately trying to drown the monster in his marrow with fatherly devotion. His cold halls are now filled with the beautiful mess of youth. He looks at Lena and realizes she did not just give him heirs, she gave him a way out. Lena has evolved into the quiet heart of the machine. Moving with a lethal grace, she is the one who truly holds the reins, guiding their fate with velvet iron. The transition to legitimacy is a bloody affair. Adrian is purging the old guard, those who crave the filth, while the darkness they left behind claws at their heels. Evolution is the only path to survival. While Victor handles the final, grim necessities, Adrian meticulously crafts their disappearance from the life of sin. 5 years on, his brother perishes in a squalid room in Buenos Aires. Adrian feels nothing. That connection was severed and incinerated long ago. There are no tears for the departed. To him, his brother was a failed experiment in blood, a ghost that finally stopped haunting the periphery of his life. The grave is an empty gesture. Adrian refuses to offer a single moment of mourning for a man who only mourned his own failures. He turns his back. With the last ghost buried, the future takes shape. Young Elena already carries the air of a sovereign, proving that in this house, you lead or you vanish. Marcus watches from the shadows, a mirror of his father's quiet intensity. Adrian begins the heavy task of teaching them that the world is painted in shades of blood. He speaks to a 9-year-old about the heavy price of protection. He is showing them that surviving often requires losing a piece of one's own light. By their adolescence, the wall is built. The blood money is now stone and steel, a titanium shield forged to keep his children from ever tasting his crimes. Lena watches the man she once feared and sees a savior. The killer is still there, resting in the tall grass, but now he only hunts to protect his pride. Adrian knows his inner darkness remains. His family is the only tether holding the beast at bay, a beautiful cage that makes the monster want to stay. A decade later, they stand in the very ruins where they began. What once felt like a tomb is now a monument to the war they survived together. Regret is for the weak. Blood was spilled, yes, but choosing her was the only moment of grace in a life of sin. He would do it all again. He recalls when he feared this love was his fatal flaw. It turns out the cold strategist was a novice until his heart finally learned to ache. He lives a fractured existence. One moment he is deciding a man's fate, the next he is on a sideline, keeping his two worlds from ever bleeding together. The Empire is just a fading echo. They have created a kingdom where loyalty is the only scripture, standing united against a world that will never understand. Lena found her peace, and Adrian turned his arrogance into their armor. They are two damaged souls who built a cathedral out of their collective wreckage. Their hands bear permanent stains, but their union is the ultimate victory. A love born of calculation and cold blood became the only thing that saved them.